Fact-checking U.S. Energy Secretary at GasTec 2025. At GasTec 2025 in Milan, U.S. Secretary of Energy Chris Wright outlined a strategy centered on natural gas, nuclear revival, and permitting reform. But several of his statements conflict with current international energy data. Natural gas as the fastest-growing energy source. What Wright said: the fastest-growing energy source on the planet is natural gas. It's more than twice as much new energy in the last 15 years than wind, solar, and batteries combined. Reality check. According to the International Energy Agency, IEA, the majority of new global electricity capacity since 2010 has come from renewables, particularly solar PV and wind. In 2023 alone, renewables represented over 80% of new power capacity worldwide, with solar leading by a wide margin. This claim is incorrect when measured against IEA data. Nuclear energy hamstrung by regulation. What Wright said: nuclear came out in the mid-50s, grew strongly for 2 or 3 decades, then got hamstrung by overwrought safety concerns and government regulatory smothering. Reality check. Nuclear generation did rise rapidly from the 1950s through the 1980s. After accidents at 3 Mile Island and Chernobyl, public opposition and stricter regulation slowed growth. Nuclear's global share of electricity fell from 17% in 1996 to about 9% in 2023. Wright's framing is partly accurate, though it omits economic factors such as cost overruns and competition from cheaper renewables and gas. Permitting timelines. What Wright said: permitting in the old days would take a week, then 30 years ago it took a month or 2. Now it drags out for years. Reality check. The Council on Environmental Quality, CEQ, reports that major environmental impact statements under NEPA take an average of 4.5 years, not decades. While timelines have lengthened, Wright's suggestion that permits once took a week or a month is an exaggeration. U.S. electricity growth versus China. What Wright said: China has been rapidly growing generating capacity. We haven't had much growth in 20 years. Reality check. China added over 1,200 gigawatts of power capacity since 2005, dominated by coal, solar, and wind. U.S. electricity demand has been relatively flat, but capacity has grown, with coal retirements offset by new gas and renewables. The U.S. has seen limited demand growth, but the claim of no growth in 20 years is inaccurate. Net zero pathways. What Wright said: we got 85% of our energy from hydrocarbons last year, same as we did 50 years ago. Reality check. In 2022, fossil fuels made up 82% of global primary energy. In 1973, the share was 87%. The decline has been gradual, not static. Wright's number is close but misleading, as the share has decreased modestly over 5 decades. CO2 as plant food. What Wright said: you can't have life on Earth without carbon dioxide. It's plant food. Reality check. True in a biological sense. CO2 is essential for photosynthesis, but according to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change IPCC, elevated atmospheric CO2 is the main driver of climate change, causing rising global temperatures, extreme weather, and ecosystem stress. This framing is misleading without context. Europe's dependence on Russian fuels. What Wright said: Europe developed dangerous dependence on Russia. 50% of their natural gas, a large amount of oil, meaningful coal, all came from Russia. Reality check. Before 2022, the EU imported 40% of its gas from Russia, 27% of its oil, 46% of its coal, Eurostat. His 50% gas figure is slightly high, but broadly aligned with pre-invasion reliance. Russian gas to China. What Wright said: they're going to build a new natural gas pipeline to China. That'll take 5, 6, or 7 years. Reality check. The planned Power of Siberia 2 pipeline is scheduled for completion in the mid-2030s. A 5 to 7 year horizon is possible, but optimistic given delays in Russian infrastructure projects. OPEC's spare capacity and oil prices. What Wright said: we're seeing a lot of OPEC's spare capacity come onto the market. Reality check. As of mid-2025, OPEC Plus spare capacity is estimated at 4 to 5 million barrels a day, most of it in Saudi Arabia and the UAE. Some capacity has been restored after production cuts, but it is not accurate to describe the situation as a lot coming onto the market. Bottom line. Chris Wright's remarks at GasTec 2025 blend policy positions with several claims that do not align with international data. While his emphasis on LNG growth, nuclear revival, and permitting reform reflects U.S. priorities, the factual record from IEA, EIA, Eurostat, and IPCC provides a more nuanced picture of the global energy transition. You've been listening to Sustainability Soundbites presented by E+E Leader. For partnership opportunities, reach out to a member of our team.